I'm going to tell you a secret, but first you have to promise me you won't laugh. This is an uncomfortable subject for me, so I'd appreciate your understanding. Do we have a deal? When I was 5 years old, I watched a movie no child should ever see. I don't remember much about the circumstances of my viewing other than it was at the house where my family lived late at night. In the dark, with only the television providing light, the film was an animated feature and depicted themes of animal cruelty, death, and dismemberment. Scenes were surreal and terrifying and left a deep impression on me. For years afterward, the only scene I could remember clearly was an evil man was drowning a family of cats in a stream, which I would have nightmares about for years afterward. I remember seeing it early in the movie, but followed by many more disturbing and surreal scenes. Remember your promise, because this is the part I was talking about. I never told anyone about what I saw, but the name of the movie was well known, The Aristocats. I suppose I can forgive if you broke your promise, but I must empathize that I am not joking. I saw a movie called The Aristocats, filled with the scenes I have described and scarred me for life. I didn't think about the experience very often, but it was always in the back of my mind some way. Though I didn't realize it at the time. I know now that it caused me to shy away from animation children's show. It subtly informed my whole outlook on the trappings of childhood. I found myself bracing with dread whenever I had to watch any children's animation in school. My childhood was relatively normal otherwise for an introvert anyway, but every once in a while I would think back to the movie and find my inner peace disturbed. It wasn't until maybe the third or fourth grade that I started to realize that my experience with the movie had been not typical. I didn't tell anyone, not even my parents, about what I witnessed in that dark room at age 5. But I eventually figured out on my own that there was nothing horrific about the version everyone else had been watched. I still wasn't willing to see it for myself, but I figured that what they had seen what I had, I would have been able to tell whenever they spoke of the film. Anyone who had anything to say about it seemed to consider it either a nostalgic classic or unremarkable. When I was in middle school, I asked my mom if I ever seen the Aristocats. She said I had once, having stayed up past my bedtime and watched it secretly. She seemed strangely disturbed by the film. And I never wanted to watch it again as a small child. I asked if we still had it in the house, but she said I had been so afraid of the movie that she had thrown it out. It had been a home VHS recording that she bought in the estate sale, rather than a retail copy. I finally decided to watch the movie again. I ordered it from the library and watched it one Saturday. It took me a couple of hours to work up the courage to finally hit play. I found it to be a wonderful film. Immediately, I realized whatever I remembered seeing at age 5 had nothing to do with this movie. There was no graphic violence, no psychedelic scenes, nothing that should have traumatized me as a child. And yet, what I seen all those years ago, definitely shared elements with this movie. The kittens and their mother were drugged and kidnapped, but not drowned. But I instantly recognized the moments leading up to this divergence, and almost had a flashback to the cartoon drowning I had witnessed. I was hoping to find the closure, but instead I found I was more trouble than ever. There was no question in my mind now that I have reviewed some awful and perverted versions of the classic film. I told one of my friends about it a few days later. I didn't let him know how convinced I was of what I had seen as a young child. Instead, simply relating it as a vague and confused memory. Like, hey, the other day I saw Aristocats. I used to be terrified of the film because of some reason. I thought I saw some gore scenes and cats drowning when I watched it at 5 years old. Funny how your memory plays tricks on you at that age, isn't it? He told me about the movie Felidae. He explained that it was an animated movie about cats with a similar animation style and contained graphic gore scenes and was definitely not for children. He said maybe I somehow seen that movie instead of the Aristocats. Streamed and watched Felidae. I saw what was my friend meant about the style having the same feel as the Aristocats except dark and bloody. But it wasn't what I seen. I knew. I knew for sure. That 5-year-old me had watched the movie the same purpose as the Aristocats. I also knew that it contained some bizarre and disturbing scenes not shown in the mainstream version. This whole thing was driving me up to a wall to try to get some sort of closure. Started seeking out and watching old children's animation that contained graphic and disturbing elements that would never be included today, such as Watership Down, the 1978 version. While these works were interesting and gripping in their own way, they were decidedly non-Disney. While other studios may have been willing to take such risks as the works decades ago, such as the Wish Cats because the Disney properties made me sure that the version I had first seen, was something I absolutely not supposed to ever. I let it go after a while. A few years passed, and in college, I learned about this urban legend called Lost Episodes. People claiming to have seen episodes of TV shows or altered versions of movies, usually animated, that contain graphic and disturbing content. The episode movie was often found in unexpected places. Those claiming to have seen it often said it mysteriously disappeared, and whether it's a VHS tape appearing, have somehow self-erased, website going dead immediately after viewing, etc. To be honest, I didn't put much stock in the validity of these stories. But with my Aristocats experience still in the back of my mind, I decided to look further into it. I found a YouTube channel called Cartoon Geek who was discussing a certain lost episode for his 40,000 subscriber special. After going through the obligatory thanks and talking about how much his subscribers meant to him and all that, he began, "Now, for those of you who are new to this channel, I'm basically a guy obsessed with all things nostalgic and geeky about cartoons and other media. Most of my content is simply reviewing old cartoons and whatnot. Usually superhero-related content. However, I do a side series of this on the strange and creepy side of animation. For example, my 20k sub special was a 3-part series on Disney and their alleged similar messages in films and television. This video you're going to watching now is some sort of that same vein. We're going to be taking another look at certain lost episodes. For those who don't know, lost episodes are basically this urban legend of the TV shows, which were lost. As the name implies, these episodes are said to contain graphic or disturbing content and surreal elements generally regarded as material that the public was not meant to see. A few months ago, I covered an alleged lost episode from the 1968 Filmation series, The Adventures of Batman. I loved this show as a kid, even though it was a few decades before my time. And this one episode with this scene where Batman and Robin fall through a trapdoor set by the Joker slides toward their doom. At the end of the slide tumbled, there was a giant furnace, looking like the Joker face. Of course, this was a kid's show. They don't actually slide into the furnace and burn alive. They get out with their gadgets. So to recap, in 2009, this anonymous internet post started circulating online about an alleged lost version of the scene. In it, the dynamic duo actually do slide into the furnace, burn alive, scream, and are shown graphically being burned to a crisp, followed by surreal and non-linear scenes of grieving friends of Bruce Wayne and mourning in the funeral service. Now, when my first video on the subject, I was honest to you guys. I didn't really think there was much credibility to the story. I like to keep an open mind on this show, but there were just certain elements of this post that made me say, okay, this is probably bullshit. Like how the tape conventionally erased itself after the anonymous author viewed it. Since then, I've gotten a lot of comments and emails talking about how allegedly this lost episode has been posted online. Naturally, a lot of you are already saying this is fake, but this topic won the poll for this special. So let's find out. After some more preamble, the video cut to the alleged lost episode where the part where Batman and Robin are sliding down the tunnel towards the furnace. All the parts where the two use of their belt gadgets to get free were removed, and the two were close to the furnace. The screen filled with fire and the poor quality shrieks played. After that, there were some strange abstract scenes, but all of these seemed to be simply random clips from other episodes with some editing effects thrown around them. Cartoon Geek returned. Okay, so right off the bat, Batman and Robin die off screen, which is obviously not what happened in the Lost episode post that was shared around. They basically just used the flames earlier in the scene and cut them over to make them look like that and Robin died, adding in a canned scream effect. The surreal scene in the following are also just random clips from throughout the show with various editing tricks applied. I could have done some of them myself. So while this is an impressive work, I think it's pretty clear that this is a fan project inspired by some anonymous post. I'm going to rate this animation myth as debunked for now. Gave some more breakdowns and disconstruction of the clip before ending with some sort of promotional giveaway. What really got my attention was, however, were some of the comments. There were at least a few people insisting that the lost episode was real and that they have seen it with their own eyes. I peoned on these people, asked if they really had seen the episode about the circumstances. You responded with an hour. Yeah, I was at summer school, and during recess I snuck up to the school's library backroom to be alone, but a VHS of the cartoon was there and saw it. Honestly, I really wasn't disturbed back then since my parents let me watch R-rated horror movies and stuff back then. But yeah, this thing is real. I asked if he knew any information about the other supposed lost episode phenomenon, but he said he did not. I did some research on my own. There were a few lost episode stories floating around the internet, most about children's shows. To be honest, not many of them seemed all that credible, although I strongly felt that there was something real here behind the embellishment and fictionalizations. I decided to see if there were such stories surrounding the Aristocats. My searches for disturbing content and the movie returned nothing, but accepted the this one scene in the Aristocats totally scared me for life as a kid stuff or information about that Feliday movie. I tried reaching out to some of the credited animators, writers, and crew members, varying the content of my emails so as to the cast as wide as net as possible. For example, some of my emails were focused on disturbing content that may have been cut, while the other drafts asked more generally about the alternate versions or cut scenes. I also expanded my web searches. I used all the search engine tricks I could find and started using obscure foreign language engines. And after a few months of no information and no response to my email queries, I decided to think that maybe I should just forget about the whole thing. Maybe my real memories of watching the Aristocats had merged with some nightmare I tried to create from my present memories. And maybe repeating those memories to myself so many times during my childhood and falsely convinced me of their own reality. I was about to consign to this newfound self-closure when I found something during one of my foreign language searches. It was a thread on a Chinese message board. The OP had a JPEG image and the text that roughly translated to Aristocats movie creepy. If I had a coffee to drop and spill over my computer, I would have. The image dashed away any hope I had passing off my childhood experiences, just as a traumatic nightmare that stuck in my head longer than it should have. It was a frame from whatever the twisted version of the Aristocats I had seen. And while I hadn't actually remembered this particular year still, till I found this message board, the instant I saw it, I remembered the clip, and more memories started flooding back. Still vague, but vivid and definitely real. I was now more firmly convinced that I'd never been before than the violent version of the movie was real. The image was of the black kitten, Berlioz, with his face nearly filled the frame, and his eyes were wide and terrified, red veins bulging. His fur was standing up as if it was charged with electricity. This picture it wasn't any more inherently disturbing than the grotesque fan art you could see from all kinds of different shows and movies. But unlike those other images, I knew this one had a generally sinister story of some kind behind it. As such, it haunted me like no other image it had ever had. There was only a couple of replies on this thread, which both of them were short, and neither of them provided any information about the image. So I used Google Translate to ask the OP for more information, but we received a response. I performed a reverse image search of the file, but it returned to no other results. However, a few weeks later, I finally got a reply to one of the emails I had sent to the production staff. The reply was one of the emails I had written to that hinted more strongly at the reality of what I had seen as a kid. The response was short and curt, but it gave me new hope for finding answers. Hello, sorry for the late response, but I read between the lines of your message, and if you've seen what I think you were hinting at, you need to look into the Lost Media Group. That's all I'm going to say on the subject. I googled Lost Media Group, but the closest thing I found on the website was an online called the Lost Media Society. It was a media for enthusiasts to collect, trade, buy, and discuss lost media, including lost episodes, as in real lost episodes that simply never aired. Not the urban legend, the ones that contain surreal, disturbing, or supernatural content. This community was interesting in its own rights and became involved with it, even becoming a site moderator. Once I was established a respected regular, I decided to PM one of the head admins and ask him about the lost episodes. He responded with he heard of it, but it really wasn't something the site dealt with. He recalled that in the past and been talking about some had even suggested banning discussions about it, since it was seen as a spam topic after a while. I asked if he knew about an organization called the Lost Media Group. He said that he heard of it but didn't know anything about it. Suggested that I contact a certain other admin who didn't know about this entry. I messaged the admin and got a response within the hour. He told me the Lost Media Group was a group alleged by some behind the lost episodes, but not among. According to him, they were produced not just ultra versions of movies and television episodes, but were also said to make their own versions of other media such as video games, comic books. He said that he did not know much else about them other than that some lost media collectors were willing to pay large sums of authentic work by this group, and that before the Lost Media Society had banned discussions of the lost episode legends, some of these collectors have asked about them on the site. I asked if he'd refer me to such a collector. He said my work was my best bet would be a certain retired site, admin who was no longer active in Lost Media Society. He linked me a couple of archive threads by this individual asking about lost episodes and gave me the man's email address. I shot him an email asking about his interest in lost episodes, and even went as far as directly ask him if he knew a lost episode type of the Aristocats.